Greetings, parish orphans and retrogrades. Happy paradoxical Monday. We don't even believe in such a keybold contradiction in terms, but if there is one, I wish it to you as always. Parish orphans and retrogrades in AD 2022, the year of our Lord, in which we become more and more confused every month. Something extremely interesting and profound and momentous has happened in the popular culture. That would be the Shia interview in Word on Fire. Within 1 week of the Bishop Barron Word on Fire interview of Hollywood superstar Shia LaBeouf. Wait, he isn't dead. Shia surprise. There are profound moments, profound moment after profound moment. And everyone's talking about it. This thing is 850,000 views in under a week. It's going to be 1 million easily within the week, but maybe tomorrow. It's profound. And on today's show, we're going to talk about why. I don't even have to use Shia's last name. Everyone knows, every trad's talking about it. A lot of right-wing publications are talking about it. The re-embracing of traditionalism is not just LARPing. It's not just LARPing. It's transcendent. Look, I've been saying this for 4 years. This is a transcendent moment. All of you people out there that over the last 4 or 5 years have re-embraced the Tridentine Latin Mass as Pope Francis jealously and desperately, like the red-faced tyrant that he is, tries to suppress it. You guys embrace it more. You realize it. I think this is transcendent. I remember saying this to Taylor Marshall when we were going through and doing what we could to repopularize it. Is this just an echo chamber, man? I asked him one day, is this just an echo chamber? Or is this expanding beyond just a few excited traditionalists? And we couldn't really tell because at that point, we didn't know if it was just confirmation bias from talking to people that felt like we did about the Tridentine Latin Mass. Well, his channel exploded when we were doing those shows about the Tridentine Latin Mass and about the red-faced tyrant, Francis, to borrow the Led Zeppelin lyrics. And to me, in many ways, it's been confirmed over the last 3 years or so, but the Shia interview with Bishop Robert Barron of Word on Fire, of all people, confirmed this is a transcendent thing. You get right-wing secular outfits now talking about it. It's not just that the TLM's back, it's that the TLM was never gone. But now, through their attempted suppression of it, the leftists in the church are calling more attention to it. For natural-born rebels like Hollywood superstar Shia LaBeouf, they're drawn to it. And they're not just drawn to the rebellious aspects of it. Oh, no. No. Shia's an actor that I've always related to. And I don't really relate to actors. I didn't grow up doing drama. I played sports and I did the rock music. So I don't know the drama. But man, his character, I mentioned the character he played in Disturbia. That's a young me if there ever was one. And it doesn't surprise me as much as it surprises some of you guys that he would not only say, look, I converted to Catholicism playing Padre Pio. That's the context for this whole interview. But he is coming up with, Shia, non-chewed meat, non-refurbished, non-regurgitated, insightful tidbits in terms of the justification for why go to the Latin Mass at all, why be Catholic at all. They're close to the bone. That you don't even hear on trad sites. You don't even hear on trad weblogs. You don't hear on trad podcasts. Shia gave so many new and exciting and I think energizing analogies that are totally just from his natural reason perspective. He hasn't gone to a bunch of shows like mine or TNT or any of the other typical fare for folk like us. He's proving the veracity of what we're saying from what would otherwise be an outsider's perspective. But to a guy like me, this is maybe how I'm a little different from some of you, parish orphans and retrogrades. Maybe a bit how the retrogrades and parish orphans are different from the audiences of some of the other trad influencers out there. He's an outsider to traditionalism. Yeah, he keeps saying, hey, I'm not an expert in this. But to me, he's not that much of an outsider. right? Shia talks profoundly, poignantly throughout the course of this interview with Bishop Barron about entering this last movie as a final plea toward God and to get his career. A bit of a paradox, he says. On fire, a pariah, an outcast. And, you know, I never went that far outside of the light for myself, but I don't have the typical youth of a lot of the traditionalist kids that I've taught. I don't have I'm a cradle Catholic, but I don't have the same background. So I relate very much. And I think a lot of you retrogrades in my audience do too. But I was always a bit of a rebel, and I relate very, very dearly to some of the, I think, more insightful analogies that Shia draws out in this hour 15 interview than anything I've ever heard. Like, we're protective of the Latin Mass because it's like finding a really cool band that not many people have heard of. A lot of sort of 70s and 80s standard fare trads would be like, well, what's he talking about? You know, there hasn't been a hot chant act in 800 years, right? He's like, no, you can, I love chant, and I hate the hymns. Chant I love, but I also like the rock music, you know, so there are people that are dipping out of both wells, and that's me. That's, I think, a sizable portion of this audience, but we retrogrades and parish orphans, I've talked about the slow, steady, organic growth of this channel a lot lately. We're the people that are dipping out of both wells. We're the people that are in the world but not of the world. Me and when Bossaletti comes on this show, my friend Boss, we call it in but not of. That's the subtitle of the shows we do. That's a special class. That's your retrograde. A different thing from a straight up trad. People that know what he's talking about. Like a speakeasy when jazz was kind of cool. It's cool to find a little off the beaten path band, particularly when you're a young person. And Shia makes analogy after analogy with Bishop Barron. And what I'm going to do for you today, sorry for the long introduction, crew, but this is important. This is a transcendent moment. It's a reflection as a transcendent moment of the transcendence of the TLM within American culture. See, I didn't just say Catholic culture, within American culture. The transcendent evangelical power of the most beautiful form, hands down, of the Roman Rite, the Tridentine Latin Mass. This is what's based. This is what the better aspects of the new rite are doing, reconnecting with religious tradition, the one true religion, the one true tradition. Sorry, crew. Well, you guys all like that stuff. It's a big deal. And I have handpicked for you in order in this hour 15 interview on Word on Fire, the 20 most important moments, and I'm extrapolating from them some quite unusual, I don't want to say aphorisms, some quite unusual takeaway principles that definitely stand the Novus Ordo crew on their head. I mean, the faithful defenders of the Novus Ordo on their head. Might surprise them, confound them. But I think some of these extrapolations I make from what Shia says, Shia LaBeouf, Hollywood superstar Shia LaBeouf, in this Shia surprise.
This was indeed a Shia surprise.
I'm drawing from it in a way that might even surprise Trad. So let's get down to it. But I want to plug one more time. The class on timothyjgordon.com, the Retrograde Academy free class to those who can't pay. Suggested donation $100. The 8-week Baltimore Catechism class beginning a week from tomorrow. I've already been through this role here. There are 2 universal catechisms in the church. The Baltimore Catechism ain't one of them, but it's really important to American Catholics, which is who my audience is. Based, conservative American Catholics who have probably mainly cradle Catholic that have re-embraced tradition and they live in but not of the world. That's you, parish orphans. You are my people. And I'm doing it for free. Go to timothyjgordon.com. If you don't have the money, you can use this as a parent of a homeschooler or as an adult ongoing ed self-educator. timothyjgordon.com. Only room for 500, and we're fast approaching it. We opened it from 300, 400, 400, 500. That's it. We're capping it at 500. as you know, a big part of this channel's mission is binding together the thesis statements of my 4 books. So the clerical patriarchy, the episcopate refuses to do its job, refuses to be manly, refuses to be fathers to us. We'll talk about that some today. We got COVID, by the way, in the house. It's a little bit of a riddle. We have Matt Fradd's family COVID, but I haven't seen Matt Fradd in person in a couple of years. Figure it out. It's like a riddle. We literally got this COVID from Matt Fradd.
We had a similar guest in our home.
Yeah, a guest that traveled for a mutual friend of mine and Matt's. Gave the family COVID. Thanks a lot. No, we're perfectly fine. Well, here's what I was going to say. I'm going to do my real estate for life spot. Get from a blue state to a red state. You know the deal. You don't have much time. Do it today. Go to realestateforlife.org. You need to be in a red state for what's coming down the pike. COVID 23, 24, whatever. You need to be around good people in a true republic. That's the thesis of my book, Catholic Republic, which is why I push Real Estate for Life so hard. What can we do actively? We can get to a truer republic, which is a state, particularly a small state, particularly in the South. That's something we can do. What else can we do? Like Captain Jack always says, you got to know the difference between what a man can do and can't do. You can take back the patriarchy of the household. There are 2 patriarchies in Christianity. The clerical one, the bishops, the effeminate, effete, girly bishops, refuse to be fathers to us. We can't make them do their jobs. We can't do that. That falls in Captain Jack's category B. We can take back our own families by being virtuous, hard, push-up doing, Bible reading, magisterial affirming, virtue enshrining men that are the leaders of our wives and children. That's what we can do. That's what Case for Patriarchy is all about. And you do this in the context of the home. This is what Don't Go to College is all about. Homeschool your kids K to 12 and then don't send them to college. Send your boys to trade school. Send your girls off to be married. This is how we create the true republic from Catholic Republic. So this channel, and like all the other Catholic channels out there, has a real mission statement other than just go to the TLM. You know how a lot of the other ones are just like, just go to the TLM, it'll fix everything. That's not true. We got to be in the world, but not of the world. We have to do our part. Our part is homeschool your kids. Don't send your kids to college. Men, you have to lead your families. And you have to live around other people so you can have a co-op of sorts, a red state, and maybe balkanize after that. Who knows? That all goes together. It's a kind of manly Benedict option, different from the Benedict option. Rod Dreher describes the fact that he ran from bullies all his life. And people don't like that aspect of the Benedict option. This is the Benedict option where you're willing to stand and hold your ground. And it's the 4 books I published. The most recent is Don't Go to College. Real Estate for Life represents one of those important 4 pillars. Get to a red state, get out of a blue state. That's a long endorsement, but it's not just a spot. I only advertise things on this channel that I really believe in. Get out of a blue state, get to a red state. Go to realestateforlife.org. Also, on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, go to Catholic Simp Watch. That's my favorite new Catholic site. Also a big part of what we do. Don't simp. Kings don't simp. Kings don't simp.
You're gonna be in so much trouble for that.
I would like to partner with the good folks at Catholic Simp Watch. All right. Hey, I got to be me. This is why we grow slow but steady. Okay, so let's begin. I never care. You think I'm Teflon, man. I get in trouble, I get out of trouble just as fast. And I don't have a boss now. That's why I want to grow slow and steady. I don't just want everyone in the audience. I'm doing it for you, the parish orphans and the retrogrades. Okay, now I want to get serious. Because you know you get insights here that you're not going to get anywhere else. Shia's insights were like second to none. This was amazing. This was a transcendent moment. And it's all the more magnificent, shining, just a moment in time, that the interview was granted by this Bishop Barron, who loves stars. He loves the music in the movies, right? He admits it, right? He gets goo-goo in the eyes. So Shia, I'll start out by saying by way of introducing moment number one. I don't want this to be too long a show, but I got 20 moments that are each quite important. Shia says he's a Whitman character, he's a feeler, and that's why he loves the TLM. Bishop Barron is willing to hear this first moment and brook it and tolerate it and really maybe build to the force of the point even, and others throughout this interview because he loves the music and movies. And I'm trying to be charitable here, right? I think that Bishop Barron could almost single-handedly, armed with the Holy Spirit, I know people are going to be talking about that if I said it monolithically, he could save the American church. He is so influential if he would only have a father's heart. And by have a father's heart, I mean a few things. I'm going to be unpacking it throughout my analysis of the Shia interview. Here's what I mean for openers. If he would treat me or whoever he thinks is like a Pharisee, and he's been brainwashed, is like a Pharisee just for loving the TLM, Taylor Marshall, I don't know, Eric Sammons, any of us who love the TLM are kind of known as this is one of our main things. This is at least our main liturgical thing. I do a lot more than just the TLM here on this channel, but that's my main liturgical thing. Go to the TLM, okay? The Novus Ordo. It's going to die off in the 21st century. Sooner would be better. It's going to die off. And it needs to. You know, and you guys know the deal. The bishops don't like that. The Pope doesn't like that. They're clinging to it, but people don't love the Novus Ordo. People love the TLM. Bishop Barron was willing to hear Shia say, you know what? I love the TLM. And there are all these great moments. We're going to get to them in a second. But really unpack it. He wasn't trying to shush him. He wasn't trying to shame him. He wasn't trying to virtue signal to him because he was so goo-goo-eyed over this big star. He loves the music and the movies, Bishop Barron does. So this really cool guy sitting across from him, and he gave him the opportunity that I implored Bishop Barron. I was in talks with Brandon Vaught. Hey, could I dialogue with Bishop Barron? There are types of people I'm not really that dissimilar from a Shia LaBeouf, particularly for the trad world. If you really like Shia, Bishop Barron, Brandon Vaught, we could have gotten along great because you looked like you got along sincerely well with Shia LaBeouf. With some funny moments of miss, he really did a good job on this interview, even though he's clearly a boomer who doesn't understand. He was trying hard to understand a TLM lover like Shia LaBeouf. For the first time ever. He was trying. So if he had the Father's heart and he internalized this, then Bishop Barron could literally lead the American church to a Catholic springtime. But he'd have to make some conversions, not just understand and then go back to playing, he thinks the middle road, but really the center left. Shia said, look, man, I'm a Whitman character. I'm a feeler. And he said, this all started because Barron was trying to talk to him about method acting. He asked him, Shia, are you a method actor? Shia brought up the liturgy from this. This is what he said. Hold on, let me go back.
Intellectual and just kind of douchey, kind of like just like me, you know. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like there's people on film sets like it gives some people an excuse to behave terribly, you know.
So he says that method acting gives some people on film sets the opportunity to just be mean. And he uses the term douchey. He says you're douchey and mean if you're a method actor. Now, Shia LaBeouf is a genuinely very good actor. He's just really talented. I don't care. I wasn't a drama kid, so I do like the movies and I like music, kind of like Bishop Barron. I like those two things. I don't go goo-goo-eyed over these guys. I didn't try to do drama or anything, but he's genuinely good. And even the likes of me, who doesn't know tons about drama aside from a pure consumer's point of view, I do love movies. I can tell, man, he's really good. So people like me or Bishop Barron that don't know tons about movies, we just say, hey, if you're really good, does that mean you're a method actor? And Shia is like, no, that's just one type of being a really good actor. Usually, it just makes the method actor douchey and mean. And here's the thing. He's the one, Shia, that brings this into the realm of because I'm not a method actor, which is overly ratiocinated, because it's overly intellectualized, that's why I love the TLM. This is a paradigm reversal where in the church, the Novus Ordo champions have characterized the long-standing traditional liturgy, the one of the people, the one that's truly uniting. All languages go in and listen to this universal language, Latin, and have done so for, depending on your perspective, either 400 years or really more like 1,400 years, if we count the slight modifications as not much of a change at all. That's the feelers draw. That is the, the allure of the TLM. It's the mass for every man. Like Shia LaBeouf. He says, I'm a Whitman character, man. I'm not a thinker, I'm a feeler. Now, he's very well spoken with some really intelligent analogies. I want to know about someone. How smart are they? I look to how good are their analogies. That's just my thing. Here's the next big, this isn't the second moment, because this is the first moment of the Shia interview, and I'm drawing a second principle from it. It's the inverse of what Shia said about the TLM. It's for feelers. The Novus Ordo, which is kind of, I think it's false antiquarianism. I won't say kind of. I think the Novus Ordo, for the people that actually love it and defend it with a good heart, which I don't think is many of them. I think it was introduced with evil intent, even though it's a fully licit, fully valid liturgy. I think the people that can defend it, they do so on grounds where they can say, look, here are all of these aspects. The forms of the Mass are there. Some of them are even older technically than the TLM. Even, they're continuous in that way, though they're not contiguous. You know, the Eucharistic prayer number 3 comes from blah, blah, blah in the 2nd century. And you're like, okay, but no one was using it for, 19 centuries. But so it's the good-hearted, but I think misled defenders of the Novus Ordo, not the ones that introduced it with a bad intent. They're the method actors. They're the ones that are like, oh, did you know Eucharistic prayer number 3 is actually really old, even though it was barely ever used? It's like, that's the false intellectualism. So break people into 3 camps. This is what Shia's one remark set off in my mind. TLM, everyone, aside from boomers who don't seem to like it, everyone, older people than boomers, greatest generation people, and then every generation younger, Gen X and below, and then 1,000 years beforehand, loved some iteration of the TLM. Most of them don't speak Latin. I was surprised how few of trads know Latin. I'm like, do you want me to teach Latin? I have 2 classes on my website, and a lot of people are like, yeah, maybe I'll do that. I've been going to the TLM for 15 years, and it's like, that's cool. You don't need to know it, and Shia talks about this later on. So they understand what's universal, as Shia does, about the TLM. It's a feelers thing, not a thinkers thing. And a lot of trads right now are kind of bristling because they're like, we like being called the Pharisees, who are the thinkers. It's like, most of you guys that love it, parish orphans and retrogrades, don't even speak Latin. And sometimes the Novus Ordo crew will point that out to be like, you're hypocrites. The point is, you don't need to know Latin. It enhances it a little bit, but most of it's just muttered anyway. And that's perfectly fine with me. The low mass is what was introduced to me a year before Summorum Pontificum, and it was beautiful. It was a mumbled low mass that lasted about 26 minutes that me and Steph started going to in 2006. I don't know how we were seeing it because it was diocesan by Monsignor Ralph Belwamity, our mentor, spiritual director to me, taught us Italian, showed us the Latin Mass, visited us in Italy when we lived there. The new Mass is the ratiocinated thing, false antiquarianism, where, yes, maybe they did 1 or 2 liturgical practices in like the 2nd century AD, didn't do them for 1,800 years. And then the liberals at Vatican II said, let's get back to that. Even though it's not a contiguous chronological practice, we can claim that it's got continuity and it's even older than the trads, and it'll be like a thumb in the eye of the trads' eyes. I say continuity requires contiguity. The other important principle that Shia kept coming back to without saying it is this thing. It was like a eureka moment for me. And it coupled with the interview I did with the Jewish convert late last week. Lovely lady, was a fun interview to do. I was talking about how Catholicism is the one true faith, and therefore it is the show and tell religion. How effective, I said, or to Melissa Presser, would show and tell from 2nd or 3rd grade be if you just showed your baby turtle without telling the really cool story about it, which is why it's so important to you. Men are the rational animals. We need language. We need propositional logic. So showing it's not 50%. Showing is not 50% of show and tell for the purposes of evangelization, which is mainly about the telling. This is why the post-conciliar show the faith to other people, but don't tell, the false attribution to St. Francis. Bring the gospel always, but only use words if necessary. That's total bunk. It's absolutely fallacious. Telling is about 99%. Showing's 1%. I did something nice for you. Cool. I did it. The most important part is because of Jesus. That's telling. So if post-conciliar evangelization cut out the telling in show and tell, you need both. Showing's the big part of, telling's the big part of evangelization. The post-conciliar libs will only ever show. Liturgy is the precise opposite. Catholicism's still the show and tell religion, but think about this. What did the post-conciliar libs do? They don't do the showing in the Mass. The Eucharist is the main point of the Mass. It's the source and the summit, right? So it should be show and tell. In the liturgy, showing is the main part, and they cut it out. All they do is they tell you. Technically, which is why these faithful defenders of the Novus Ordo get a little bit snooty, get a little bit ivory towerish when they defend the Novus Ordo. They're like, actually, did you know that the Eucharistic prayer that seemed brand new because it was scrawled on a napkin in like 1969, they used one line from the 2nd century AD, and they get all uppity with you. It's like, yeah, technically, I've never been one of those people, right? I don't go to SSPX chapels. I've never been one of those people that says that the new Mass is invalid or illicit. They dotted their I's and crossed their T's when they wrote this thing. So technically, they are telling you all the things that have to be told for it to be a valid Mass. But they're not showing you the source and summit of the faith. In the liturgy, the main part's showing, and they cut it out. In evangelization, the same post-conciliars cut out the telling. Catholicism needs show and tell in evangelization, show and tell in the liturgy. Shia pointed this out with the simple line, look, I'm a Whitman character, man. I'm a feeler. You see how deep that is? Unbelievable. My head was exploding as he said all this. So I'm just listening to these. I'll play them. You might not be able to even hear them because I play them super fast. But the second moment is when Shia went on then, before Barron even brought up the liturgy or anything Catholic, to extrapolate. The Mass is a performance. And when he first said this, you're like, oh, I wonder if he gets it or if he's going to say something that's a little bit like Roz on Frasier when she calls a Mass a performance. And she says something irreverent without trying to, like, oh, the Mass is like a little show. And Frasier's like, no, that's the congregation. Shia gets it. The Mass is like a performance in the way he says it is. He says it's immersive. It's complete. One needs to be completely immersed in the Eucharist to do this right. And again, it's show and tell. Shia gets it. Okay. So let's see. Here's what he says.
The priest is performing the last moments of Christ's life, and he is a vessel for this extraordinary experience, this extraordinary moment in time, and he's replaying as the host is imbued with the Spirit. That is a bit of a performance. And so different priests have different performances. And there's not to say a priest is an actor, because that somehow minimizes the sacred nature of the task, but there is a correlation between Mass and being an actor completely immersed in an immersive experience. Mm-hmm. That was my first inroad to Pio, was, okay, that...
So he says not to minimize the sacred nature of the task. He is not Roz. He gets it. And then he goes on in moment number 3, that's really important, from this thing where he says, it feels like there's a profound secret being shared with me. So Shia's even, between moments 2 and 3, even tapping into the apophaticism, the beautiful hidden mysteries of the Mass that so many people admire with the divine liturgy. You know, if you're a Greek Catholic or an Eastern Catholic, you admire it in the divine liturgy, or if you're a Greek Orthodox, you get the beautiful emphasis on the apophaticism. Shia has tapped into that. He says that's not just an Eastern Christian thing. That's also a Latin Mass thing. A profound secret is being shared with me, is not being pushed on me. And that's the aspect of the performance that he, as a great actor, an objectively very high quality actor, understands. That's why he's not going to say something like Roz from Frasier, like, oh, this is just a little show. He gets that there's a sacred dimension to it, but he also gets that the point of the human dimension to it is to not play what are supposed to be insinuated notes. What's a great jazz musician? There's a difference between a very skilled player of jazz and a great jazz musician. A great jazz musician knows which notes not to play. Let the insinuated notes ring out. You're not just a technical player. You've got the feel for the music. You know what to play and what not to play. The profound secret being shared would be spoiled if you were passing it off, pushing it on people, on the congregation, on the laity. Now, he's going to get into, in moment 3, where he says a profound secret is being shared with the TLM, Shia's going to get into moments of excellent, incisive critique of the Novus Ordo. And he'll say it, he'll say a line or two, and they'll be, look, this is controversial, I understand. He understood a lot of the context. It was really impressive. Look, I don't want to get in all the way into the controversy. I know, Bishop Barron, you're kind of on the other side of the line here. But he understands the apophaticism of the TLM, and he understands the missing apophaticism that lacks in the Novus Ordo. That really impressed me. That really, really impressed me. Now, I will also say that Shia LaBeouf, he's my younger brother's age, so I've got 4 or 5 years on him, and I have many students that I've taught as an ex-high school teacher. Remember, I taught 8 years of high school, 2 years of college. So particularly when I was teaching college, I was a really young guy. I taught some guys that were 2, 3, 4, 5 years younger than me only, and they became friends. Particularly guys that were seniors in high school, I became really close with. What Shia says about being shown by the Capuchins, the TLM, is precisely what my closest ex-students, who are now good friends of mine, all said to the word, to the proposition about the TLM when I showed them. This being brought into a subtle, secret, sublime, profound mystery of the universe with the Latin Mass, like heaven on earth, is what all the best and most faithful male students I've ever taught feel when they're shown it. And all the female students who end up, let's say, marrying their contemporaries, those male students, they end up seeing it just because, they're followers, right? The males, the priest of the household is the one that needs to feel it. That's why such a recurring theme in this show, in the TLM itself, in traditionalism itself, and in Shia LaBeouf's points is masculinity and fatherhood and leadership. Because, you have to reach the males. If you want to be a good teacher, don't listen to anything teachers tell you. You got to win the coolest dudes in the room. The football players, the basketball players, the guys that, the valedictorian who isn't just a nerd, does all the other stuff. Everyone will follow him, particularly the girls. The girls are not embarrassed about being followers. A man, you're supposed to sort of be embarrassed if you follow another man. Girls aren't. This is what girls are built to do, follow virtuous men. So you have to worry about converting the cool dudes in the room. That's my son, Gaby, who's 4. He's always talking about, this is a cool dude, that's not a cool dude. Shia LaBeouf's a cool guy. He's like, he's a bro. He's a street tough. He talks about being a street tough. His dad was like a Mongol or whatever. He got him into the motorcycles and stuff. been in some street fights. Okay, so this is what's different between, the Novus Ordo's got the crosshairs on it in Shia's interview and in our breakdown of it, and in lots of our shows. And the trads love that, but this is a little different. Retrogrades are a subset of trads that are different from the trads, right? I mean, you guys know I've never done drugs in my life, but I've been in several too many street fights and had a rock playing wayward youth of mischief without getting to be a man on fire like Shia admits he was before here. I pulled back at the right time, but I'm there enough to really understand and to be able to connect, as I did in the classroom, college and high school, with younger dudes, the good, virtuous younger dudes that are built to be holistic leaders. Not built just to be smart, built to be smart and tough. Not just built to be smart and tough, meant to be smart, tough, and holy. Smart, tough, holy, virtuous. These are the four things that every young man must be. And you have to win the smartest, toughest, holiest, and most virtuous first. Everyone else will follow him. That's how efficient polities work. That's how the church is supposed to work. So Shia really gets it. Now, he says this other thing here. Where is it? Let's go through it. Moment number 4. This is, in some ways, the biggest moment of the interview. Most of you probably leapt for joy when you heard him say this. Let's get into it.
You're activated. It's probably why Mass has changed. You know, the Mass has changed because there was a yearning to activate the public in an artificial way. And I would say, I mean, listen, I'm not no expert on any of this, but it feels like this bureaucratic activation, like rules were set or a change happened in the tradition from Latin Mass to the Mass that you now receive at a traditional Catholic church. It's almost as though the church is trying almost from the office, activate the audience without putting the agency on the priest.
We have full conscious active participation.
Which is where the singing and the back and forth comes from, whereas old Latin Mass put all the agency on the priest to be fully activated. And that activation of the priest was supposed to activate the audience, activate the laity. That all the agency was put on the priest. And so, and I don't want to get too far into this because then you get into controversy, but Latin Mass
It's already gotten into it.
Deeply. And because it feels like they're not selling me a car. And when I go to some Mass with the guitars and stuff, and I'm from, Santa Ynez, right? So that's where I was catechized. And there's a lot of guitar playing, and there's a lot of like...
So now Shia uses a rhetorical technique that I use a lot on this channel. I'll say every damn bit, every sight of something controversial that I want to say, I'll say it all. And then when I get through saying every last letter of the proposition I want to say that's controversial, I'll go, but I don't want to get into it, man, because that's too controversial. I don't want to get into it. Look, the Novus Ordo feels like you're selling me a crappy car, but I don't want to be controversial. Yeah, so this is a thing. I never did drama. Maybe I've got a hint of the dramatic about me. But look, I'm not. You could cross the line, Bishop Barron, and I don't want to do that. I love the TLM because it's beautiful and apophatic, and it's like some cool band or some cool mystery has been shown to me. The Novus Ordo has none of that. It feels, he says, like it was changed because there was a yearning, he means by the conciliar liberals, to activate the public in an artificial way without the agency of the priest. Wow, Shia, dude, that's what they were trying to do. They're trying to circumvent the priest. It is a Protestant thing. It's a priesthood of all believers thing. This is what they were trying to do. And they dotted their I's and they crossed their T's in a way. I know the faithful Novus Ordo champions out there are chomping at the bit to say this. I know. There's a difference between the intent and the text, and I've written about it and talked about it in great measure. So he says all this controversial stuff, and he goes, look, but I know on the other side of the line, you could go too far. I don't want to get into the controversy. I really do love Shia. I have a lot of fellow feeling is the term that's not used too often anymore. Fellow feeling for this cat. He's, a little bit younger than me. He's played characters, particularly in Disturbia, that remind me of 18-year-old moi. Like nothing I've ever seen on a screen or in a book, aside from maybe Holden Caulfield. And he gets it, and he's reaffirming here in moment 4 all of this stuff: artificial yearning to activate the public, activate the audience without putting the agency of the priest. New Mass feels like selling me a car. He's again, this proposition stands for the expression of an opposite to typical implication of what the TLM is. The TLM is about intuition and feeling The Novus Ordo is, at its best, intellectualism, a false connection to antiquity, false antiquarianism at its best. At its worst, the bad guys who I think gamed this up, I think they know, well, if you tell people the Eucharist is the source and the summit, but you show them that it's not, they're going to believe what you show them. That's how the liturgy works. It's not like evangelization. The showing is more important than the telling in liturgy. The telling is more important than the showing with evangelization. The libs who really infiltrated and have all but ruined the church swapped both. Show and tell religion, think about it. And more than feeling like they're selling me a car, which made me laugh because he said it to Bishop Barron while saying, I don't want to be controversial. It's beautiful. I don't think the new Mass feels like selling me a car, because when a salesman puts the pressure on me to sell me a new car, he really does actually want me to like it. Now, if he's trying to sell me a lemon, he's only trying to get me to see the false virtue of the car. So maybe it's a little more like that, a lemon. But what I think is a better analogy, even though I like Shia's, is it's more like the Novus Ordo is more like woke virtue signaling. How? Get rid of this beautiful chant. Yes, I like rock music. No, I'm not from the devil, but I love chant. I love chant, like the rest of you guys out there. We all do. So that's us. And yes, we all hate the hymns. They're fake and gay. They're fake and gay. Let's just be honest, okay? In honor of Shia LaBeouf, let's do a Shia surprise of our own and just say it now. The hymns are fake and gay. It's the worst music you've ever heard. Go Make a Difference, Like Eagle's Wings, Taste and See. This is the worst stuff you've ever heard in your life. And what is the point? What do Marxists do? What did they do all throughout the 20th century? They're the bullies that humiliate you. They're the bully that makes the kid he's bullying taste the white dog turd. And he doesn't just do that. He makes him say, I'm going to make you taste it again unless you say, I love this, sir. Can I have another? Then he'll let up. The point of the bully, what's been pushed on us with the Novus Ordo, the Novus Ordo bullies, what they're doing to the Latin Mass now, they're making us taste the turd and say we love it. Can we have another? They not only introduce all of this shitty singing of hymns, but then they make you sing. Well, I taught at Novus Ordo Catholic high schools, and they're all like, well, Tim's kind of the leader of the religious crew here, the leader of the conservatives. The principal once waved me over and was like, these kids aren't singing. And I was like, I'm not going to take them on. And I told him in front of the principal, I was like, I don't blame you guys for not singing. This is blasphemously crappy music. And so they're not only introducing the crappy music, but they make you sing it. They make you participate. That's tasting the turd and then asking to have another taste. That's what's happening. So it's actually woke virtue signaling. It's not just that they think 2 and 2 equals 5. They will make you say it. No, you say 2 and 2 equals 5. We're not going to leave. Look, all this headache can go away. Say this dude wearing a dress is beautiful. Say 2 plus 2 equals 5, and we'll take the Politburo out of your hair. We'll let you go on with your business. We'll let you violate a few of the rules. You know, like the Nazis, you can go back to selling cigarettes on the side. We see that. That's fine. Just say 2 and 2 is 5. Just pretend the Novus Ordo and all of its crappy accretions, like the hymns are the easiest to beat up on, are beautiful. It's the worst stuff you've ever seen. But the point of vulgar displays of power, my co-author Michael Robillard on Don't Go to College is always pointing this out. The point of the vulgar display of power, even Satan uses it in The Exorcist, is not just to get away with a contradiction. AOC flies around in a private jet, has a $50,000 ball gown while she decries the woes of evil rich. The point is not she just wants to secretly get away with her hypocrisy. Her point is shoving your nose in the white dog crap of hypocrisy and making you say, I see it. I love it. You have to sing along to that crappy filth that they brought into the Novus Ordo, the hymns. And Shia gets it. But that's, I think a slightly even +1 analogy to, I mean, but Shia can say it with style. New Mass feels like selling me a car. I don't even think they want us to like it. I think they want us to hate it yet they want to force this participation on us. Okay, I need to speed up. Moment 5, he revisits what he said in moment 3, where he said it feels like a secret that's profound, that's being shared with me. Now he says, it feels like I found something like a really cool band. That's what he says. It feels like I found a really cool band. And a lot of trads are like, what's he talking about? To play, all 4/4 times signature blue, 12-bar blues. This is from the devil, right? No, wrong. There's a lot of really beautiful rock out there. And for people like Shia or me, or in this sense, I guess, Bishop Barron, that grew up knowing that you have to be in the world but not of the world, not both, the way, your typical cultural Catholic at the Novus Ordo is, not neither, the way too many trads are. You have to be in the world, one, but not of the world. That's what we're trying to work out here. That's what this channel is all about, by the way. So moment 5, when he uses the analogy, feels like I found something cool, like a really neat indie band. That's what the TLM feels like to us. And that's why you don't want to you want to deny the impulse to get overprotective of it and to keep it private. I want to share it. I want to give it. I want it to be mainstreamed. And sometimes I feel like some of the rattier tradiers have gotten mad at me that I'm trying to really popularize this thing. I don't just want it to be our little club. It is Catholicism. This is the liturgy. The Eucharist is the source and the summit of the liturgy, which is the source and the summit of the faith. I want everyone to have it.
It activates something in me where it feels like I found something. It's a little bit like a band. When a band is pushed on you, it doesn't feel the same way as you finding it. When you find it, then you root for it. It feels like this special thing that you found, and you protect it, and you hold it, and it's yours. When somebody's selling me on something, it somehow takes it kills my aptitude for it, and my suspension of disbelief, and my yearnings to root for it.
I get it.
There's an immediate rebellion in me.
It kills my suspension of disbelief. First off, using double negatives correctly is a mark of a good mind, a grammatically correct double negative, the conceptual double negative. It kills my suspension of disbelief, precisely what the Novus Ordo does, which is why every cool young guy that's a little higher testosterone will not ever accept the Novus Ordo. If you're higher T, you won't accept it because it kills your suspension of disbelief to have all this stuff trotted out there for you. To have them saying this is the body and blood of Jesus, but not showing you it. We'll get to a moment later where he's like, the priest is doing this homily where he's talking about the flea market he went to last week. It's the most banal thing in the world. And you're telling me this is to prep walking through the death of Christ and the sacrifice of Christ, and now we're going to eat his body and blood? No way. You just killed my suspension of disbelief. Whereas the apophaticism, what you don't say, the mystery, this heightens my willingness to suspend my disbelief. And then he also says, the Novus Ordo, if you try to push that band on me, it immediately brings out a rebellious response in me. And I said I feel one of the things, you're not supposed to repeat your confessions, right? But I feel genuinely bad about how disrespectful I was as a young man because I was only being brought to Novus Ordo masses. And it brought out such a rebellion in me, the crappy music, the effeminacy, the doing this. I'm now sing along, guys. The effeminacy, the female teacher. Why are all my teachers female? I don't look up to them. They might be nice ladies. I don't look up to them. The only males at my Catholic school, Catholic middle school, Catholic high school, the only males were cucked that taught there, in my view. I didn't have any cool guys like a grown-up Shia or take your pick, even a gristled Mel Gibson type or a more feeling but still masculine Jim Caviezel type. Where the hell are all of the men? The new mass. It was literally my middle school teachers, I kid you not, would walk around during Friday Mass. They would look at you and they'd make sure you sing. That is what Karens do. The Novus Ordo in this way is by and for Karens. I'm not singing, lady. This is a crappy song. It's disrespectful to Jesus and to my dignity. No. So Shia gets this perfectly, and this is why, my friends, if you don't get it by now, if you don't get it after watching the Shia interview, which you should, the Latin Mass needs, I agree with Pope Francis, there needs to just be one form of the rite. Roman rite's the only one with two forms. It's existed uncomfortably for 50 years. There does need to be only one form. You know where he's wrong? It needs to be the TLM. Sorry, Novus Ordo, bye-bye. We need Damian Lillard to hit that 35-foot shot and then wave bye-bye to Russ. Bye-bye. It's going to happen. They're clinging to it, though, these Spirit of Vatican II boomers. And they're bitter, and they're angry at the natural allure of the TLM. And that they want the women in the church. They want the effeminacy. They want men to be told, technically, this is the Eucharist, but never shown. That's the Novus Ordo. That's the effeminate. We need the masculine to return. And that's why for the next section of this interview, after moment 5, when we go to moment 6, we start talking so much, not we, Shia, starts talking with Bishop Barron about fathers and what's masculine. This is what you need. At Catholic schools, it needs to be masculine dudes teaching. It's a great life. Like 30-hour work week if you don't take forever to lesson plan, which you shouldn't. That's another woman thing. It should be male leaders modeling. No, seriously, don't do porn. You shouldn't even need the anti-porn software on your phone. Sorry. Cut it out. That's soft. Stop. That's gross. Hey man, don't be a cuck. Don't snicker during Mass. Bow to your king. Kneel to your king. Yeah, we need to get the TLM in here because the Novus Ordo, you're not even going to know that's really your king. You tell men, you tell the cool dudes, you tell the football players who I was close with when I taught, right away. We're having Mass in the gym with bleachers. Me and only some football players are the ones kneeling during the consecration. Men know to acknowledge the king in the room. And the Novus Ordo doesn't do that. The Novus Ordo is buying for the Karens. Because we live in the age of absconding fathers, like Benedict said. Now, in moment 6, Bishop Barron does his thing where he thinks he's mediating the divide, and he's not mediating squat. He's not mediating anything. He could, though. And I would call on him, and you all ought to call on him. Bishop Barron, you could be the leader of the American church. You could, with the aid of the Holy Spirit, no messianism here, no false messianism. You could literally lead the American church out of this squalor, out of this cesspool that it's become. He's got a huge following, and if he just got tradier and stopped, if he took from this interview, wow, Shia LaBeouf's a cool guy. He's not some pharisaical trad. He's not some mean guy. He was just saying he likes it because he's a feeler. What?
He's not an angry trad.
He's not angry. It's just, this is the only thing that can convert a high T young man. Novus Ordo doesn't do it. Might convert the girls in the halfway, but they're not meant to be the ones doing the evangelizing. They're not meant to be the priests of the household. You see how it works? And then they're the teachers. They're the theology preachers. And then just young men who need to be the leaders roll their eyes at it. The silly textbooks written by women, by and for women who think that a cool young guy is not a cool young guy that would get made fun of if he tried to be the one preaching. You got to get the cool dudes first, as Gaby would say. So Barron thinks he's mediating this, and we really need him to take a step toward the light. He's not far at times. And this interview, because he did do such a good job with this interview, a lot of you get all mad. Oh, don't say that. I'll say what I want, man. He did a good job with this interview. Now, I got irritated in between the first and second viewings of it. I've watched it twice now. I got irritated afterwards. He did a good job as an interviewer. But it frustrated me in between because I'm like, he would never do this for me. He would never do this for Eric Sammons, Taylor Marshall, Michael Matt, Michael Voris. He wouldn't talk to any of us. I think all 5 of us have tried. Maybe not Michael Matt. I don't know. I think everyone in that group, save maybe one, has tried to talk to him, and he denied us. Okay, that hurts because he's got something that we don't. He's the patriarch. Yeah, we all have families. or biological patriarchs, but he's the leader. So Bishop Barron now says, well, yeah, the dark side of the old Mass is that it was a pure performance, which is the old psyop. People are always telling you this. It always feels unbelievable. The Novus Ordo people who defend it will always say, well, it was a pure performance. People were totally disengaged. I don't know, man. My first TLM ever was before Summorum Pontificum, and it was mumbled through, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And Steph too, aside from this woman here, right? But I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It was a 26-minute Mass mumbled through, none of the beautiful chant, which I was also learning I loved. My mom got me into the Litany of the Saints. God bless her. That's one thing I got that's traddy from my parents, which I appreciate. I also got close paired friendship bonding, protector, best friend role of the husband from my dad. So I got that from my dad, and I got the Litany of the Saints chanted in Latin from my mom. And then all the other religiosity you're seeing, traddy stuff, I picked up on my own. So Bishop Barron says, well, the dark side of the old Mass is that it's a pure performance. I don't buy it. Because I saw the old Mass before Summorum Pontificum and even mumbled through. It was a billion times more beautiful than the best Novus Ordo I'd ever seen. Don't buy it. That's a psyop. And they say it all the time. They say it. They don't prove it. But he does admit, but now the dark side of the new Mass, Shia, this is Barron, yeah, it makes the congregants feel too put upon. Like they're being, he was admitting, which I appreciated, that feels like you're being sold a car. And it's corny. Really, it's effeminate, but he didn't use that term. So then he goes on to say, well, the liturgical wars, he uses that term, and he says something to the effect of they need mediation. And I think he thinks, I don't know what his solution is, but what they really need, these liturgical wars, is some sort of revisitation of Sacrosanctum Concilium. I've suggested it before. Hey, we can't get around Sacrosanctum Concilium, but it's not that specific. The mediation should just be like, hey, let's just TLM it with an amendment to the TLM. Let's let the two readings be done in the vernacular. And we dust off our hands and we say, okay, we did what Sacrosanctum Concilium wanted. That's the enculturation. Okay? So that's how we dust off our hands and we say Vatican II documents are correct. The Missal of Paul VI is now abrogated. It does take in the best of that, it takes in the best enculturation. Maybe you can, I don't know, stick some vernacular in one other 15-second thing and be like, look, we took a little of the Novus Ordo, 2%. And the rest of it, now we're just doing basically the TLM. And if in the 1940s and 50s people were bored during it, I don't know. I don't know what to do if people are bored during it. Who cares? What do I care? I mean, that's on them. It's a beautiful Mass, and it points you at the source and the summit of the faith. That's what I say. He thinks they need some sort of word on fire style mediation, which isn't even splitting the baby. It's not even 50-50. Novus Ordo is right and trads are right. He was talking like he's right in the middle. He was talking that way to Shia LaBeouf because Shia is clearly on our side of the liturgical wars, very clearly. But Barron ain't even 50-50, which wouldn't be trad enough. He's like 99-1. You never hear him make these points unless there's a cool guy that he's Google-eyed over on the other side. And Shia is he's being friendly, so he kind of agrees. He's like, yeah, you could do too much performance. And so I don't know. But then Shia goes back to immediately kind of pushing back. He goes, look, yeah, I don't know Latin, so I guess it could be a little bit exclusive, but I don't even have to know the words with Latin. And again, this is the thing. Look, go to timothyjgordon.com, take the 2-semester-long Intro to Latin course. If you're a trad, you should know the language. You don't have to know the language. Too many trads, they talk like, yeah, we have the better thing. You don't need to know the language to appreciate how beautiful it is. After you've gone for 5 years, you should learn basic ecclesiastical Latin. It's not that hard. That's why I teach it. I'm surprised how many trads don't know Latin. But technically, Shia pushes back by saying, I don't even have to know the words again. I'm a feeler. The Latin Mass is for feelers. which is what most people are. The best sense, Novus Ordo taken at its best, is overly ratiocinated. That's not the way it's being characterized. It's being characterized the opposite. And then Shia goes on, moment 7, he goes, what doesn't work is to be overly rationalistic. Word, plot. Whereas Latin Mass, Shia says, put me in the feeling realm. This is the third time he's repeated this point here in number 7. He said, it took me into a connection. It took me into a connection. The way the Protestants talk about sola scriptura gave me this direct connection to Jesus. Shia's much smarter than that. Shia says, no, it's the Mass, which is supposed to be mediated through the agency of the priest, absolutely correct, which took me into the deeper personal connection with Jesus. Why? He's going to talk about that in a few moments. Why would a mediated presbyterate celebrant of a Mass take you into an unmediated relationship with Jesus? Is that a paradox? Sounds like one. No, it's not. Shia is absolutely correct, and that's what's beautiful about the TLM. Now, he goes, I used to listen to Sam Harris TED Talks, and I didn't understand the difference between belief and connection. He's like, if you get overly rationalistic, the way really the Novus Ordo taken at its best is overly rationalistic. It tells you without showing you that Jesus is God and the Eucharist is Jesus. Then you're in the realm of belief without connection. And that's what atheists say Christians are. They just believe, but they're not really connecting with what they claim to be connecting with. That's the Novus Ordo. And that's why it is, at least as it's done 99% of the time, arguably all the time. That is why it feels, at least, I'm not saying is, but feels damn near an idol factory. Feels that way. I didn't say is. And then he dumps on Sam Harris a bit, and so does Barron, in a way. Barron's like, Sam Harris cries out for God in the same way that we're talking about now, because it's a natural impulse of man. Moment number 8, I want to give props to Bishop Barron. He says something really great, a really nice point about incense. Shia's talking more about apophaticism, the beautiful hiddenness, the masculinity of hiddenness. Even like Mr. Burns talking about beautiful old-time actors could do more with a flick of their eyes than nude harlots dancing around in movies now. Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Men appreciate hiddenness much more than the floozies understand, the floozies of today. Grace Kelly versus Nicki Minaj or something like that. It's just no question. 100 men out of 100 prefer Grace Kelly, are more attracted to her. Not just they respect her more, they're more attracted to her. They're talking about incense, and both men, Shia and Bishop Barron, discuss that the smells and denying one of the 5 senses can enhance the others. So the smell of incense, the beauty of it, is lacking in the Novus Ordo, but also it heightens other senses because you can't see. And Barron's the one that points this out. He's like, yeah, you're literally suspending your sight, and so you're using more smell and more hearing. And that's crucial to connection, which was Shia's previous point. So good job on point number 8. Another one another moment in this interview you'd chalk up to the category of apophaticism. Great job made by both men. They're really working together well when they're talking about the beauty of hiddenness and mystery. It's a thing that both men, interviewee, do really well throughout this interview. Number 9 moment. Shia is just very humble. It doesn't require too much unpacking, but I didn't want to just skip over it without mentioning it. He says, I walked into this movie with my life on fire, deep shame and deep guilt. And then he talks for a few minutes about how pain and suffering made him willing to try something he wouldn't have tried before. Then he also goes through what he doesn't know it, but he's attacking American Calvinism, American Protestantism. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps, which is impossible. But Protestants and Calvinists in particular will literally say it as if it's not impossible, like it's a virtue. And he's like, before, I didn't realize that faith is a free gift. All you have to do is accept it and then share it afterwards, which Bishop Barron also makes that point articulately. But he said, before, I thought my career and my life is what I make of it. I thought my managerial skills would equate to a fulfilled existence. And that's just wrong. And he talks in moment 9 really beautifully about connecting to Augustine, St. Francis, men who had been gluttons and who had hurt a lot of people along the way. And he doesn't shy away from saying that. Really walked into this with his career over. It was his last stop. He's insinuating he was at kind of death's door via suicide. I walked into this with my life on fire. And he's also beautifully honest in a related point he makes about 5 minutes after about, like, I'm not even trying to say I got into this with the right motives at first. I got into Padre Pio, the man, because I just thought this could be my path back onto, returning to the hustle of making movies again. Whereas I was a pariah, my agent wasn't calling, my manager wasn't calling, none of the directors that I'd ever worked with were calling. So God works in mysterious ways. He even works through egotism at the beginning and then, brings about purer motives in the heart. It's beautiful. But he doesn't shortcut Shia saying, I was being a jerk. I had been a jerk. He admits, moment 10, straight up, I came to this out of ego. It was like a 3-card Monty because I cared about it initially for my career, and then I ended up caring about it more simply. That's moment 10. Moment 11, the latter half of the interview, now that we're on the last 10 points that I think are really important, it's right about the halfway point. He talks about his initial appreciation and admiration for John the Baptist as an Old West figure, a manly man, gristled. And he juxtaposes John the Baptist with his previous view of Jesus, as he almost discusses him the way Nietzsche describes Jesus in the Antichrist. Nietzsche says Jesus was the man with the simple inability to ever say no. So this is the effeminate Jesus that has been pitched to us by champions, not the intellectual champions who know what's going on, but the Karen champions, the middle school female teachers at Catholic schools around the country, the champions of the Novus Ordo, the women lectors, the effeminate bishops, the gay priests. They have given us an effeminate Jesus. And if you go to
They don't understand masculinity.
Right, because they don't understand masculinity.
Which is why we need masculine men teaching.
Right. This is really important. Another WASP Calvinist Protestant thing is to run down teachers. Everyone else does. Those who can't teach. Horrible. Everyone should just homeschool. But if they're going to be Catholic schools, the teachers must be male. And they must be men that talk direct and bottom line and simple.
I mean, everybody knows I love masculinity, but I don't understand it. I mean, there are lots of women out there that love the masculine, but we can't teach that. That's not in our nature.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter how trad a wife or a woman is, she cannot teach young men. They will not admire her. They can say, that's a good woman. She was nice. But if your kid is going to be spending 8 hours a day away from you, which I don't recommend in 4th grade or even 6th grade, they need a good model that unfortunately is surrogating for something their dad, if he could be doing during the day, should be. Now, not everyone has the same situation. Not everyone can homeschool, and even if you can homeschool and you do, a lot of times it's your mom. But that's why your dad can call in on his lunch and give a little lecture or at least check in. So he's making an appearance throughout the day. The best situation, though, is being able to have your dad helping with homeschooling you. Not everyone can do it, I get it. Don't populate my inbox with, oh, Tim, you said it has to be a dad. I understand most dads can't. I'm talking the ideal situation. Homeschooling, everyone can do that, though. That'll be your mom taking direct orders from, okay, your dad, what do I do here? You know, you write the curriculum as husband and wife, so the dad has direct oversight. That everyone can do. Not everyone can have the dad actually dispensing the lessons. John the Baptist, all of us know, eating locusts and honey, vox clementis in deserto, this rugged, old Western type figure. Shia makes this comment, and it's beautiful, but he says, I thought Jesus was like effeminate, and he's not. Jesus is more baller than John the Baptist. I was saying this to Steph last night about Frodo and Sam. The movie Lord of the Rings, Frodo and Sam, actually Sam's far more manly. Tolkien in the books, we don't read the books as often as the movies, right? Because it's easier to watch a movie. Steph's forgotten. Tolkien is very clear. Yes, Sam's masculine. He's cool. He's not cooler or more masculine than Frodo, though. He ranks the hobbits' bravery and valor. So Tolkien knows not to outshine his lead with his supporting. And the movies do that. Frodo seems like a girl half the time. Sam seems like a Chad. Sam is a Chad, but he's Chad to a greater Chad in the books. That's important. Same thing with John the Baptist and Jesus. And again, Shia just understands so much. And he's not just a feeler. To me, he seems like a very clear thinker who's also good as a Whitman character, as a feeler. Now, the 12th point, Shia really points out what's beautiful about the Old Mass and Catholicism in general, and the Rosary in particular. He says the Rosary feels present and tactile. He'll consistently say the TLM is more present and tactile and material formal as well. And this is just a great insinuation that he keeps making. Barron didn't flesh it out. Shia didn't flesh it out. This is why the one true faith, Roman Catholicism, is hylomorphic, form in matter. It's not just Gnostic. This is why the Novus Ordo is deficient. It tells you without showing you. We need form in matter. That's why a lot of times I do rosaries on the go, driving my car or walking or biking or exercising. And it's better to actually hold the rosary because it's tactile. We are rational animals. We're not angels. Angels and rational animals are corporeal, intelligent persons. Angels are incorporeal, intelligent persons. Angels, if they're going to say a rosary, they don't need to hold something tactile because they don't have bodies. We have bodies. It's better. You can still say a rosary without it. Most of the time, I don't have a physical, bead necklace in my hand. But it's better to do so because we are flesh and blood. That's what's true about Catholicism is Aristotelianism. Everything is form in matter. Don't deny the matter. We're not body haters. Point number 13. Beautiful moment. This hit a lot of personal notes for me. He said, look, the first thing I did once I started actually converting is I called my mother, whose love to me had felt very conditional to that point. Hey, Mom, it's supposed to be unconditional. It feels very conditional to me. But I don't, Shia says, hey, I can get past that. I'll get past that. I'll call her. She's embarrassed by my bad behavior, but still, I think her love should have been more unconditional. It's beautiful the way he put it. And of course, he didn't say much about his own father aside from being a motorcycle guy. This just made me think of a lot of things. Some of it's personal. I wouldn't say all of it, but I would return to the point that Bishop Barron, as a parent, an Episcopal parent, could, if he has a father's heart, which I think needs to be tested again and again. I've tested it before. I've written, because I've written for Word on Fire, actually. Some people don't know that. I wrote some movie reviews. 310 to Yuma, of course. I wrote to him, hey, I know me and Taylor, it's easy when you're doing dialogue. We got saying stuff about Bishop Barron. Obviously, we have some serious critiques, but we shouldn't have been so personal. I'm sorry. We went too far on a couple of the personal attacks. I don't take back any of the intellectual critiques, but that doesn't sting as much anyway. I'm sorry. Could we talk this out even privately? It doesn't have to be publicly. And Font was like, no, not for now. We're good, but thanks for saying it. And I'm like, okay, that kind of hurts. And that's not fatherly. That's not fatherly. He was the bishop, one of the the auxiliary bishops within 100 miles of me when I lived in California. So he wasn't my bishop, but he could have been mine. And he could lead the entire American church because of his influence, the vastness of his apostolate, Word on Fire, because of his understanding of pop culture. He's a boomer. There are funny boomer moments where he's just not getting Shia, though he's trying to. But he's also got the good aspects of boomer where he grew up with some good music, some good songwriting. Unlike the Zoomers, you guys have no good music in your generation. Bishop Barron had some crappy, doors and stuff, but he also had some good music that he likes, that he understands. So if he got traddier and quit fighting what he knows, because he's a smart man, the truth is, he could lead the I don't care if the trads don't like this, by the way. Bishop Barron could well lead the American church out of the quagmire. Like Chad Aragorn leading the hobbits out of danger. Bishop Barron could do it, but he's got to convert on some of this stuff. Got to quit trying to be there in the middle, militant moderateness. But first, what does he have to do that's fatherly? The most fatherly thing, admit your error. Admit you can't hope. You can't hope, which is a proposition of reason. You can't hope that hell is empty. You can wish it. Wishing is not a proposition of reason. Hoping is. So all he has to do is say, look, I meant to say wish and I said hope. Well, I said reasonable hope. So he even doubled down on hope. Hope is always reasonable even if you don't say it, but he called it reasonable hope. That hell's empty. He needs to start with that. That's really famous, really well known. It's not a perversion of his words, the way some of his defenders try to say. It is his true words. He says there's a reasonable hope. Hell might not be empty. And that's just not, he just should be like, I meant wish. You can wish this. You can't explicate false logoi. Hoping would be a proposition which seeks to explicate false logoi. He distinguishes between hoping and expecting. Hoping and expecting, both in varying levels of probabilism, seek to explicate false logoi. You can't do it. Wishing would not be doing the same. I wish 2 and 2 make 5. I can't hope 2 and 2 make 5. I can wish it, though. He needs to lead by quick, relatively painless repentance. I meant wish, not hope. I've been a little mean to trads in the past. I shouldn't be, but I'm not going to give a groveling apology. I'm just going to start. I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to turn over a new leaf. It's all he has to do, and he could lead the American church out of the quagmire. More than any of the trad bishops appear willing to. Moment number 14. Shia begins as a manly thing. Part of this discussion of masculinity, he refers to suffering as a hack in a good way, like a cheat, a quick way to get deep, a quick way to become a deep person. He said when the director asked him, well, what are you good at? And some of the brothers asked him, what are you good at? He said, well, I'm good at bleeding. And he's like, I guess I didn't realize when I gave this answer that this means suffering. And that also suffering should be dignified with a purpose. You can give your suffering to Jesus, and it can become penitential suffering. And later in the interview, a few minutes after he says this, Shia will call it a blessing because the suffering, as all of you know, is what brought him into the church. People tend to get that in this audience. They understand. I don't have to draw it out too much. Moment number 15. Again, talking about manliness, he says there's a difference between meek and weak. Shia says that he misunderstood Jesus' masculinity, partly because he misunderstood meek and weak. Fathers are meek. Fathers are not weak. Manly men are meek, like Moses is called the meekest man on earth. Fathers, manly men, are not weak. The TLM has a meekness to it. Apophaticism, not telling you every insinuated note. You all right, Stevie?
Yeah, sorry.
COVID. Thanks a lot, Frads. It's not even their fault. We didn't even see them. It was a mutual friend. Still a funny joke, though. The TLM doesn't play every insinuated note. This is the mark of restrained power. What's restrained power? Meekness. The Novus Ordo, it's got its own problems, right? Jesus, the Mass, the Rosary, they're all manly. They all represent restrained power or meekness. Shia gets this. He gets so much. Can I just say this?
Surprise.
Shia surprise? Hollywood superstar Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf. Or you guys need to go listen to that song. How does that song go? What are some other great lines?
I watched that video like
It's-
I know that song from the Floors to the Raptors. Normal Tuesday night, Shia LaBeouf.
No.
I wanted to actually play the Shia LaBeouf song, but I don't think that YouTube would allow it. They would not allow such a thing. Sorry.
Now, when he's talking about absconding father, or he doesn't use the term. This is the Benedict term that I always use, absconding fathers. But he's talking about the lack of manliness, and he says, look, there's no puberty ceremony for 13-year-old boys. The future leaders of society are men. There's no puberty ceremony. This made me think of the show I did, what was it, last Monday? With the Arms pair, the pair of men named the Arms. Big strong dudes, father and son, ironically named Arms. And the beautiful lesson that Father Arms had for Son Arms and the rest of us. You need to do a puberty ceremony when your kid becomes 13. Shia tapped into this as well. Everything he talked about is something I've done a show on within 2 weeks. And of course, we always do TLM and Francis shows, but he was talking about meekness, puberty ceremonies for young men. You know, the father's heart needs to be tested by apology. This is an extrapolation I made. Now, then after moment 16 here, the puberty ceremony thing, which just struck me as a coincidence. I just did this show on it. Then he talks for several minutes about, you know, the development of his role as PO and the development of him as a man who could play PO. And, you know, that's good stuff. That's just good stuff. You need to watch it, but there's less for me to say here. I would just point out moment number 17. The whole, what is it? The motto of this channel is for bold, obedient Catholics.
But the Capuchin.
Well, yeah, that's moment number 19. No, moment number 17. Well, yeah, because it does have a motto. You guys can't all see it. We'll talk about that in a second. But the actual motto for this channel, if you go to YouTube, is for bold, obedient Catholics. He talks about how after he's developed this for 10 or 15 minutes, Pio said, you know, he got punished by the church. He got taken out of commission for 10 years. And Shia says when Pio was exiled, he didn't hit Twitter saying, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. He just got quiet. He didn't do the Martin Luther. He could have created his own sect, but he didn't. He had enough popularity too, but he didn't. Now, this is a message, I think, for some of the trads. Literally, you have to be bold yet obedient. Pio is a rebellious soul, but he wasn't a rebel. He was a free thinker, though he never claimed to be free of the hierarchy of the church. This is one of the paradoxes. It's easy to make a lot of these points about the contradictions of the Novus Ordo church, as trads call it. Doesn't require much subtlety. It's harder to make some of these points to other trads because they start saying, oh, that's sellout stuff. No, it's important. And Shia, who is a little bit like me, a rebellious kind of soul, like Pio, who he played so well, he pointed out, Pio is known as this rebel, but he was obedient. He obeyed the church. He didn't defend himself. He became more Christ-like and more small, even if the church was persecuting him unjustly, which, as we all know, happens to TLM lay and TLM clergy. He didn't do the Martin Luther. He could have created his own sect, but didn't. Important moment. Really the one moment, learning moment, if you're going to learn from Shia LaBeouf, Hollywood superstar, for trads. Now, I think Bishop Barron was trying to balance out all of the learning moments for the Novus Ordo folks, which is everything else Shia said. It was like score, score, score. I think Bishop Barron thought he was evening it out, so it was more like 50% learning moments for either side. It wasn't. This is like the one. This was the one learning moment for trads, along with, you know, hey, I found this TLM. It's kind of like a cool band. I think a lot of trads were just like, wait, what? What's that? Maybe not. Maybe I'm being biased. But then he goes on to reinforce this strong point that he's made. He doesn't use the H word, hylomorphism, Aristotelianism, you know, the form in the matter, but he makes the point about it again. He goes, look, I'm a caveman. I need a Polaroid picture of God. Barron rightly kicks in the notion of relics. Catholicism is not Gnosticism. Protestantism is Gnosticism. You're supposed to believe in the actual reality of the resurrection of the body, though they don't have relics. Believe in the resurrection of the body just by reading stories. What about relics? What about the actual transubstantiation of the Eucharist? They're like, no, we don't believe in that. But somehow your body really will rise at the end of time. Catholicism offers the hylomorphism to the cavemen out there. I think he's a pretty smart caveman, Shia LaBeouf. But everyone needs a Polaroid picture. Even St. Paul says this. At the beginning, when you're young in faith, you need the signs and the works. Now, the TLM obviously does this the most. It doesn't just tell you the Eucharist is the source and sum of the faith. It shows you. Shia gives this great analogy. He says it's like trying to describe how pizza tastes. You just have to put it in your mouth and taste it. How do you describe how pizza tastes? The TLM does that. The Novus Ordo does not. Then Bishop Barron adds to this in a really cool way that we appreciate here. He says, have you been to the Bone Church in Rome? It's called the Capuchin Crypt. It's right off of Barberini Piazza. It's the inspiration for our logo. And a lot of the ladies out there have complained about it. Again, they don't understand this stuff. The idea is memento mori. We want to be able to touch the deathliness of life. And that's why we have this, what you are now, we once were. What we are now, you soon will be. That's the Latin on the logo. So lots of people, especially when we first started up, didn't get it. Skulls are masculine. Again, this is a mini moment even for the trads. Even trads sometimes object to the bone church, the Capuchin Crypt. Why would you make a church all from bones? Isn't that like Metallica music? No, well, I don't know. That's why skulls are kind of dope if they're used the right way. That's why dudes like this stuff. Now, they can be misused in a death metal way, but they can also be used in a sort of cool death metal way. Remember your death and be holy. There are Christian death metal bands, by the way. COVID moment. Now, speaking of COVID moments, the last point, number 20, the moment of takeaway from the Barron interview that I found the silliest, begins with a Barronism. He had lots of good moments. I think he did a good job as interviewer. But Shia has to correct him. He says the silliest thing in the interview. He goes, for a long time, preaching wasn't even biblical. And Shia looks at him. He's like, are you serious? You were told in your homily not to explicate the gospel? And Barron's like, yeah, I'm partly paraphrasing. Combination of direct quotes and paraphrasing now. Barron goes, yeah, and that turned out to be a disaster. It's like, well, yeah. Yeah, bro. The homily is supposed to be explicating the gospel. And he's surprised. He thinks that he can unify the church, Bishop Barron, by being a centrist, by going halfway. Going halfway between a side that says, don't talk about the gospel in your homily? Are you kidding me?
We're going to change the battery. Sorry, everybody.
I'll continue talking, but just think of how absurd this is. Don't talk about the gospel in your homily. The entire point of the homily is to explicate the gospel. For a long time, preaching wasn't biblical. How do you give a homily which centers around being biblical without being biblical? But then afterward, the funniest moment is he goes, yeah, that turned out to be a disaster. Shia's like, yeah. And Bishop Barron goes, if it's Christ's words, it's going to be a lot more profound than my words. And Shia just goes, there's a pause, and he's like, well, yeah. I mean, I didn't know that just guys that are so invested in the Novus Ordo, the new church, the conciliar church, like Bishop Barron, he's a very smart guy, but you see how blinded they've been to the obviousness of some of the absurdities. Yeah, that turned out to be a disaster. That when we were forbidden for 20 years from making, biblical homilies. Is like, but the whole point of the homily is to explicate the Bible, the New Testament. How do you even do that? And then Shia launches right back in. This is the very last point they make. He says, well, see, traditionalist mass hits me from a different angle. I think he just meant the angle where everything is biblical. All the air goes out of the room when we get to the homily. He's talking about the priests that do it the way that Bishop Barron was taught to. To let your hair down, Shia says, right before you're asking me to fully believe that we're about to walk through the death of Christ, seems like, huh? That's what he says to him. And Barron's like agreeing. And all I would say is this. I'm going to conclude somewhat abruptly because this went long, but all I would say is, we went longer than the length of the interview, I think. All I would say is Bishop Barron should rewatch this interview with a father's heart, an open heart, and be like, everything that Shia said, out of 20 points, 18 and a half of them were points that defenders of the Novus Ordo need to hear and learn from and course correct from. And Bishop Barron was not pushing back on any of those 18 and a half points. Of course, he agreed with the 1.5, 2 points that Shia made that trads might learn from, which I already pointed out. But that's a telling proportion. Bishop Barron should not be 50-50 in between the trad world and the new church post-conciliar world. If you base what should Bishop Barron be, where should he be ideologically, if you base it on this interview, you'd go, well, I don't know, about 18 and a half 20ths, which is to say like 37 40ths of this interview, 96% of this interview, if I'm doing the math correct, 96% of this interview, he's agreeing with an unapologetic trad, which is what Shia is. So he should be, instead of being 50% of the way to a trad, he should be 96% of the way to a trad, if you base it on his responses. And if his responses to Shia were disproportionately friendly just because he's Shia LaBeouf, then that's a problem in a whole different way. It just means he's starry-eyed or Twitter-pated or whatever, not in the like having a crush sense, but Twitter-pated with a celebrity. And that's bad in a whole other manner of inauthenticity. So I think we need to think about this. Bishop Barron should view this interview in a week. I would invoke him, please. You could do more good than anyone. You could do more good than Shia LaBeouf. Shia got the conversation started in a way that has never been available to me or Eric Sammons or Taylor Marshall or Michael Matt or Michael Voris, because you assiduously avoid conversations with all of us. Shia made all of our points in a sneak ambush, and you did a good job with the interview, and you, without even knowing it, gave away the game, Bishop Barron, the Novus Ordo game. You were agreeing with them so much. And when you tried to push back, it was small and it was feeble, and you were agreeing even in your disagreement. Watch this interview in a week. I would implore you, son to father. Watch this interview with an open mind and an open heart, and then admit, all right, look, there have been these 3 things I'm known for: opposing the Latin Mass, saying that hell can reasonably be hoped to be empty, and calling Jesus the privileged path, not the only path to the Father. And if I just made slight adjustments, but definite, slight but definite, on these 3 things, especially the TLM stuff, but you got to get past the other 2 before you can get to even being traditional friendly, because everyone remembers those 2 other points, Ben Shapiro and who is it? Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin or something. Then you could do a world of good. Really and sincerely, I would be your biggest cheerleader if you would sincerely think, because I agreed with everything Shia said. Some of the other trads might not have liked the band metaphor. Some of the other trads might not have liked
the profanity that's on Twitter right now.
The profanity. They might be. They might not like him saying "be bold yet obedient." I think the trads have some of the trads have a problem with that. I agreed with basically everything Shia said, at least every one of these 20 points. Barron seemed to as well, but me and Barron are not known for agreeing on 20 out of 20 random Catholic topics. We're not. Now, he's not a far lefty or anything, so I don't expect to disagree about 20 out of 20. But the point is, work this out, Bishop Barron. Get to the bottom line. We both like this interview a lot. He seems tremendously proud of it. He did a good job of it. It means something. It doesn't mean nothing. It means a lot. And if you would take it to heart and internalize it, we could have the American bishop to lead us out of the quagmire. Deus Volt.